You might actually be breathing in a microscopic liquid chemical reactor right now. And I mean, that expensive high-end HEPA filter sitting in the corner of your bedroom, it is probably doing absolutely nothing to stop it.
Yeah, it's essentially, a false sense of security based on just a fundamental misunderstanding of fluid dynamics.
Right. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we have a mission that is going to fundamentally alter how you look at the air inside your own home. We are unpacking a pretty dense stack of toxicology reports and highly specialized engineering blueprints today.
We really are. And our focus is volatile organic compounds, or VOCs,
Mm.
but we are looking at them through the lens of a really radical piece of technology called the Air 80.
Yeah, the Air 80, which, by the way, is often referred to in these translated documents as a human small paradise maze purification system, which is quite the name.
It is a striking collection of documents, honestly, because it completely abandons the conventional biological approach to air quality.
Right.
Instead, it frames chronic illness, cellular aging, and indoor pollution entirely as a physics problem, one that requires a really aggressive physical solution.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading through this material, I mean, it totally flips the script on what we think clean air actually means.
It really does.
And just to lay our cards on the table up front, right, today we are exploring the specific technical claims, the fluid dynamics, and the biological theories of this Air 80 system, exactly as they are outlined in these engineering texts.
Exactly.
We are breaking down the science and the philosophy behind its design. We are not endorsing the product itself, but rather critically examining the paradigm shift it proposes.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying thesis here isn't about creating a living room that simply smells fresh.
Right. It's way deeper than that.
Yeah, it is a deeply analytical exploration of how microscopic indoor environments dictate our cellular health. It argues that for decades, we have been fighting the wrong enemy.
Using the wrong weapons.
Precisely. Because we misunderstood the actual physical state of the pollution we are inhaling.
Let's start right there, actually, with the enemy. When most of us hear the acronym VOC, we immediately think of a bad smell.
Sure, yeah.
We picture, like, the formaldehyde wafting off a cheap particle board bookshelf, or, the toluene from fresh floor lacquer.
Or even the synthetic scents baked into our laundry detergent.
Exactly. We conceptualize the threat as a free-floating gas.
Which makes total sense given the word volatile. The conventional wisdom is that these chemicals evaporate at room temperature, turning into a gas phase.
Right.
And that gas is what you are breathing in.
But I have to push back on this based on what we usually experience. I mean, if I walk into a freshly painted room, I smell the fumes, I get a headache, maybe my eyes water.
Yeah, the classic new paint feeling.
Right. But a headache isn't cellular degradation. If these VOCs are just gases that smell harsh, are they truly causing deep systemic damage? Or are they just like a superficial irritant, a bad perfume that gives you a headache?
Well, the toxicology data presents a really vital distinction on that very point. Gas phase VOCs, those free-floating individual molecules causing your eyes to water, they mostly just irritate the surface. They hit your mucous membranes. But the human body actually have robust mechanical defenses against free-floating gas molecules.
Like what?
Well, they are easily caught by the microscopic cilia lining your nasal passages. Or, if they do make it further, they dissolve in your respiratory mucus, enter the bloodstream, and your liver is generally highly efficient at metabolizing and excreting them.
Meaning the gas itself, in isolation, isn't what's driving decades of chronic inflammation.
No, it is not the primary mechanism of deep cellular degradation. The foundational premise of this research is that the real danger, the true chronic killer, is completely invisible.
And odorless.
Right. Yes, odorless. And it relies on a specific environmental condition to weaponize itself. The bad smell is just the alarm bell, is not the bullet.
So if the free-floating gas isn't the bullet, how are these heavy chemical compounds getting deep enough into our organs to cause damage?
That is the big question.
And the engineering documents provide a fascinating revelation here. It basically comes down to hitchhiking.
Hitchhiking, exactly. It is a mechanism of molecular attachment. Think about any standard residential environment. Your relative humidity sits somewhere between, 40 and 70%?
Yeah, usually around there.
That means the air around you is completely saturated with water vapor, countless microscopic liquid droplets, and the chemistry reveals that VOCs don't just float around independently.
They grab onto something.
Right. They form weak hydrogen bonds with these water clusters. They also cling to ultrafine particulate matter, specifically PM 0.1.
Okay, let's define PM 0.1 for a second, because we hear a lot about PM 2.5 in, like, city smog warnings.
We do, yeah.
PM 0.1 is particulate matter smaller than 0.1 microns. To put that in perspective, a single human red blood cell is about 7 or 8 microns wide.
So it's massive in comparison.
Exactly. So we are talking about particles that are incredibly minuscule, coated in volatile chemicals, and wrapped in a microscopic drop of water.
And what's fascinating here is the physics and toxicology describe these resulting water droplets not just as damp air, but as active liquid chemical reactors.
Wow. Liquid chemical reactors.
Yeah. Because they are fundamentally water-based, they easily bypass our body's natural defenses.
Mm-hmm.
The human body is mostly water, right?
Right.
So our biology is literally designed to absorb it without triggering an immune alarm.
That brings us to the dual invasion route. We are dealing with an invisible chemical hiding inside a microscopic droplet of water. Let's look at the lungs first. Why is inhaling a liquid aerosol fundamentally more dangerous than, say, inhaling a solid particle of dust?
Well, consider the biological mechanics of your lungs. If you inhale a solid particle, say a speck of pollen or dust, your body recognizes it as a foreign solid.
It sets off the alarms.
Exactly. A specialized immune cell called a macrophage will often deploy to engulf and destroy it. Or you simply cough it out through the mucus elevator.
Right.
But an aerosol is a microscopic puddle. When you inhale it, it glides right past those defenses and penetrates deep into the alveoli, which are the tiny, delicate air sacs where oxygen exchange happens.
Because it's a liquid, it doesn't just sit there waiting to be coughed up.
No, it coats the tissue. It forms a microscopic liquid film across the surface of the alveoli. And then over the subsequent 10 to 30 minutes, the liquid barrier allows those toxic VOCs to slowly leach directly across the alveolar membrane and right into your bloodstream.
That is terrifying. But here's where it gets really interesting. The lungs aren't even the primary vector they are concerned with.
No, they are.
The most shocking detail in this entire stack of research is dermatological. These VOC-loaded nanoaerosols don't just enter through your breath, they penetrate your skin directly.
Yes. The transdermal absorption rates are staggering when you look at the underlying chemistry.
The documents explain that these droplets slip right through the sebum film, which is the protective natural oil on your skin.
Right.
They migrate down your hair follicles, through your sweat glands, squeeze through the microscopic gaps between your skin cells, and just dump their chemical load directly into your lymphatic and capillary systems.
And to understand why this happens, you have to look at the chemical properties of the VOCs themselves. Most of these compounds are highly lipid-soluble, meaning they dissolve effortlessly in fats and oils.
Okay, so they mix right in.
Exactly. In the pharmaceutical and cosmetic industries, chemists actually use similar lipid-soluble compounds as penetration enhancers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if they want a topical medication or an anti-aging serum to reach deep tissue, they formulate it with lipid-soluble carriers to deliberately bypass the skin's barrier.
But wait, I have to stop you there. If my skin is constantly absorbing volatile chemicals 24/7 just by existing in my living room, why aren't dermatologists screaming about this?
That's a fair question.
I mean, if the absorption rate is this high, why aren't we all walking around with severe skin rashes?
Because it is not an acute, localized reaction like contact dermatitis. You aren't spilling bleach on your hand.
Right, it's not a chemical burn.
Exactly. You are experiencing systemic, low-level integration. The VOCs are lipid-soluble, so they pass through the skin's lipid bilayer without necessarily destroying the surface cells.
It's a stealth operation.
It really is. And because they're being carried by a water droplet, the aerosol, the skin, readily accepts the moisture. Your skin drinks the water, and the lipid-soluble toxin slips in completely unnoticed, entering the bloodstream where it causes systemic inflammation, not a localized rash.
So for you listening right now, think about the implications of this. You are sitting in your house. The temperature is comfortable, the humidity feels fine, but you are constantly absorbing these composite liquid toxins through your pores.
24/7.
And the compounding effect of this daily, lifelong exposure creates a toxic load that completely outpaces your cellular repair speed.
Yes. The cellular damage accumulates faster than the body's natural antioxidant defenses can neutralize it.
Once you accept that your indoor environment is filled with these liquid chemical reactors, the immediate frustrating question is, well, why isn't my standard air purifier doing anything about it?
And this is exactly where the engineering theory pivots into a pretty severe critique of traditional air purification methods, specifically HEPA and active carbon.
Let's break down the HEPA failure first, because using a traditional HEPA filter to catch a chemical aerosol seems like relying on a chain link fence to stop a water balloon.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. If you throw a basketball at a chain link fence representing a larger piece of solid dust or PM 2.5, the fence catches it perfectly.
Sure.
But if you throw a tiny water balloon, it either slides right through the gaps in the links, or it hits the metal, shatters, and the liquid splashes straight through to the other side.
It is a fundamental problem of fluid mechanics. HEPA filters are passive physical nets. They are brilliantly engineered to trap solid particles larger than 0.3 microns.
But they're useless for this.
Completely. They are completely blind to gases, they struggle immensely with ultrafine PM 0.1, and crucially, they cannot structurally contain liquid aerosols. The droplets either pass straight through the weave or they dampen the filter fibers.
And then what happens?
Well, once on the fiber, the water evaporates into the airflow, completely releasing the attached VOC back into your room.
That defeats the whole purpose.
Okay.
And what about active carbon? Because almost every commercial purifier on the market brags about its massive active carbon filter, specifically designed for odors and VOCs.
Well, active carbon relies on a process called adsorption. Think of carbon as a highly porous, microscopic sponge. It works by trapping free gas molecules inside those tiny pores.
Okay.
But carbon has a hard physical limit. A sponge can only hold so much water. Once every microscopic pore in that carbon bed is filled with VOCs, it reaches total saturation.
And a saturated sponge doesn't just stop absorbing, it becomes a liability.
Precisely. The physics of desorption become the real danger here. As the temperature or relative humidity in your room fluctuates, say the sun comes up and warms the room, or you boil water for pasta, the thermodynamic changes cause the carbon pores to expand or the chemical bonds to break.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The filter then actively vomits the concentrated VOCs back into the air. Traditional purifiers give you a temporary, localized drop in odor, but they are practically a ticking time bomb for re-release.
And they entirely ignore the liquid aerosol carriers in the first place.
Exactly.
The specific failure of traditional nets and sponges leads us directly to the engineering thesis of the Air 80. The designers realized they couldn't just build a better net.
No.
They decided to treat these liquid aerosols and PM 0.1 as hostile biological threats that require sheer aggressive physics to dismantle.
The entire architecture of the machine abandons passive filtration. It uses physical and electrical force to fundamentally alter the state of the pollutant.
So walk me through it. The moment the air enters this system, it doesn't hit a filter. It enters dual negative ion zones. Explain the physics of what this bombardment does to a water droplet.
It is an electrostatic transformation. The machine fires a cascade of electrons into the incoming airflow. When these electrons hit the water droplets and the ultrafine PM 0.1 particles, they attach to the molecules.
Okay.
This imparts a massive artificial negative electrical charge to the aerosol.
So we aren't just blowing air, we are manipulating the polarity of the water itself. The engineering blueprints actually describe these newly charged droplets as charged bullets.
Right. By heavily polarizing the droplet, you make it highly reactive to magnetic and electrical fields. You are forcefully prepping the liquid chemical reactor for the trap that is waiting for it.
But before they trigger the trap, they have to deal with the water. Because as we established, the water is the vehicle.
Yes, the vehicle must be destroyed.
So the highly charged air is violently forced into a physical maze of tight S-curves and sharp 90-degree turns. The internal aerodynamics are designed to cause 50 to 200 forced micro-impacts in a fraction of a second.
This relies heavily on the principles of fluid dynamics and shear force. If the dangerous VOC is hiding inside a microscopic puddle of water, you have to destroy the puddle.
And you can't just, squeeze it out.
No. As the air whips through these chaotic S-curves, the microturbulence generates immense shear force. This force literally tears at the surface tension of the water droplet.
Wow.
The violent impacts break the droplet apart into smaller and smaller fractions, drastically increasing its surface area, which forces the water to evaporate almost instantly.
It strips the water away through sheer mechanical violence.
It forces a phase change. The aerosol transitions from a liquid droplet into a dry, solid particle.
That's brilliant.
It really is. By mechanically stripping away the moisture, you destroy the aerosol's ability to act as a liquid vehicle. It can no longer easily slip through the sebum on your skin or coat the alveoli in your lungs.
Because it's not water anymore.
Right. It is now just a dry, heavily negatively charged speck of dust with VOCs bound to it.
Once the water is stripped and the particle is dry, the system deploys the final mechanism, the fatal attraction. The air is still whipping through this maze, but the walls of this internal labyrinth are constructed of positively charged metal.
We are back to the fundamental laws of electromagnetism.
The dry, ultrafine particles carry a massive negative charge. The walls carry a massive positive charge. The particles are violently yanked out of the airstream and slammed into the metal walls.
And they don't simply brush against the wall, they are magnetically glued to it. Because the maze is incredibly narrow, there is practically zero chance for a charged particle to navigate the curves without being pulled into the metal.
Which brings us to a really crucial component of their philosophy, the sacrificial box. In a traditional purifier, you are always worrying about when the carbon is going to saturate and start puking toxins back into your room.
Right, the desorption problem we talked about.
Yep.
Well, the Air 80 utilizes a completely enclosed module for this process. The trapped VOCs, the heavy metals, the dried out PM 0.1, they are permanently bonded to the internal walls of this box by that continuous electrical charge.
So they can't escape.
No. Because the water has been completely evaporated, the chemicals lack the thermodynamic mobility to revolatilize. They are functionally dead.
That is so wild.
When the time comes, you simply remove this entire sealed box and replace it. There is no saturation point that leads to re-release. The toxins are permanently locked away.
The sheer hostility of that physical process is just fascinating. But reading further into the technical documents, the developers argue that the physics of the maze is actually only half the battle. The true mechanism of victory over indoor air pollution is mathematical.
Yes, it is the mathematics of exponential decay versus linear reduction. And this addresses a profound behavioral flaw in how humanity currently interacts with air purifiers.
Think about how we usually operate these machines. You cook fish, or you bring in a new rug. The room smells strange, so you turn the purifier on high. It runs for an hour, it's loud, the smell fades, and then you turn it off.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of emission rates. Your flooring, your synthetic couch, the paint on your walls, they do not release VOCs in a single finite burst.
I always like to picture it like a block of dry ice sitting in the middle of a sealed room.
That's a good visual.
Right. That block is sublimating, constantly giving off a steady stream of gas. It doesn't matter if you wave a fan around to clear the air for 20 minutes. The moment you stop waving the fan, the dry ice is still there, actively generating more gas.
That is an excellent way to visualize the fixed emission rate. If you turn your purifier off, your room immediately begins reselling with VOC-loaded aerosols. The toxic load rebounds instantly.
So the Air 80 is engineered entirely around the mandate of running 24 hours a day, constantly. And the math behind this continuous clearance is wild. Your couch can only off-gas a finite amount of chemicals per minute. The supply is limited. But a machine running constantly has a clearance rate that is virtually infinite.
Exactly. It creates an artificial environment where the rate of removal permanently exceeds the rate of emission.
So what does this all mean for the air you breathe? The documents break down the compounding math. Let's say the air in your room passes through the machine's maze once, and the sheer force and magnetic walls capture 50% of the VOCs.
Okay.
Because the machine never stops, that same treated air eventually circulates back into the intake. The second pass removes 50% of what was left.
The curve becomes asymptotic. It aggressively pushes the concentration toward absolute zero.
Right. After just a handful of continuous circulation cycles, you aren't just lowering the toxicity, you are mathematically crashing the VOC load to a fraction of a percent of its original volume.
And this raises an important question. What is the ultimate medical implication of engineering an environment like this?
Right. Why go to all this trouble?
The toxicology reports make their stance incredibly clear. This technology is not an aesthetic appliance meant to make your home smell pleasant for dinner guests.
It is attempting to alter human biology.
Precisely. By ensuring that the long-term toxic load drops exponentially to near zero and maintains that baseline 24/7, you fundamentally alter the biological math occurring inside your own cells.
The cellular math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day, your body engages in a math equation, the speed at which your cells are being damaged by lipid-soluble toxins versus the speed at which your immune system and antioxidants can repair them.
And for most of us living in modern homes, the damage outpaces the repair. That's what we call aging. That's chronic inflammation.
But if you eliminate the invisible chronic burden, if you stop the constant transdermal absorption of liquid chemical reactors, your immune system is no longer spending all its resources fighting a localized war against your living room furniture. It can actually catch up on deep cellular repair.
It is a massive paradigm shift in environmental health, and it really brings us full circle. We have to completely discard the idea that indoor air quality is a vague battle against bad smells.
We do.
Instead, we need to recognize the reality of the fluid dynamics happening around us. We are fighting an engineering war against microscopic, VOC-carrying water droplets that bypass our biological security systems, penetrate our skin, and age our cells from the inside out.
We finally have a clear mechanical understanding of the murky waters of chronic indoor exposure. The mechanisms of harm are no longer invisible.
So, to you, the listener, the next time you step into a freshly renovated office building, or you catch a whiff of that classic new car scent, your perspective will be entirely different.
I know mine is.
You will know that the real danger isn't the smell hitting your olfactory nerves. The true threat is the invisible aerosol hitchhikers, acting as tiny chemical reactors, quietly delivering heavy compounds straight through your skin and into your bloodstream.
And before we close out, analyzing these documents left me with one final, deeply provocative thought to consider.
Oh.
Yeah. We have established, through rigorous chemical analysis, that our skin is incredibly susceptible to absorbing lipid-soluble VOCs when they are carried by water vapor. The moisture acts as the ultimate delivery vehicle.
The invisible delivery mechanism?
Consider your daily routines. What other seemingly harmless moments of high humidity might actually be acting as a massive, unintended delivery system?
Wait, like what?
Think about taking a long, hot, steaming shower
Yeah.
in a typical modern bathroom that has just been scrubbed with synthetic, chemical-heavy cleaning products.
Oh, no.
The room fills with dense steam, and that water vapor violently mixes with the volatile residues on the tiles and the glass.
Oh, my God.
Are we inadvertently stepping into a high-speed, high-humidity aerosol chamber, effectively pushing a concentrated dose of toxic compounds directly into our open pores and our lymphatic system every single morning?
Oh, wow. A hot shower acting as a pressurized aerosol chamber for bathroom cleaners, the thermodynamics of the steam, the open pores, that is going to completely change how I view my morning routine.
It is definitely something to think about.
That is a heavy, mechanically terrifying thought to leave on, incredibly important to conceptualize. Well, thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the invisible fluid dynamics of our homes. Stay curious,
Air 8 Free
stay
Maze
informed, and
Purifier.
we'll see you next time.
The world's first single-pass purifier. Combining ionization, electrostatics, and airflow maze. The machine replaces humans. To absorb and destroy every toxin. Air enters the ion zone. Viruses and dust gain negative charge. They pass electrostatic filters. Then enter the toxbox maze. Aerosols dry on electrode walls, breaking down into CO2 and water. Inside the maze, air twists and strikes over 60 times. Each turn ends a toxin's life. Billions of particles in 0.1 second are fully purified. It releases Earth's purest air. The superheaven air quality. 8-free, dust-free, germ-free, toxin-free. Smoke-free, odor-free, heavy metal-free. Microplastic-free, aerosol-free. Not just an air machine. The only key to lifespan freedom. U.S. Patent No. 8268058B2.